Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math.
I'm Sean Gannon, and this is Minute Math, and today we're going to learn about fractions, decimals, and percents. %. Okay. Well, we have 90% right there, okay? We need to write that as a, decimal. Well, one of the things we like to see is when we see a percent, so we have 90%, what we're going to do is, there's a decimal place right there, okay? Right, 90 point whatever. We move that decimal place 2 spots over. So, when moving it 2 spots over, we have a decimal place right here. We have a 9, and then we have a 0, okay? We have a 0 out front. I like to put that place value there. So 0.90. Now, we don't really need to write the last little 0, so a lot of times we'll see it as just 0.9, like that. And there we have our final answer. 30%. Okay? Well, when I say that 30%, what I do is I take the spot right there, that's where the kind of decimal is, and move it 2 spots to the left. That's how you convert that to a decimal. So now I'm left with 0.30. Okay? Now we don't need that trailing 0. Some people say, well, it's round to the nearest thousands, but it's just 0 afterwards. So we really can write this as 0.3 as such, because no need for the zeros, and there we have our final answer. 115, the 5 is weird there, 0.9%. Okay, that 5 is going to throw me off, but it's okay. So 115.9%. Well, again, we move the decimal place 2 spots to the left. That's it. So we're left with then 1.159. Now they said we have to round this to the nearest thousandths. Well, the 9 is in the thousandths place, so we're good. So 1.15 is our final answer. Just a 9%. Okay, so this one's a little tricky. The decimal place after the 9 should be right there. We need to move that 2 spots to the left. 1, 2. So that means we have a place value. So I'm going to put a decimal place there and a 0 in front of it, showing that it's in the decimal sign. And then we have a 0 right there for this place value, then the 9. And that's it. We have our answer. 0.09 is the same thing as 9%. 7%. Okay? So we have 7% right there. Well, our decimal place is right there. Okay? And now we need to move that to convert to a decimal 2 spots to the left. Okay? 2 spots to the left. Well, that gives us that decimal here. We have a 0 and then a 7. Put a 0 in front of the decimal place for good measure. Okay? That's a 0, not like a weird looking, backward 6. And so we have, 0.07. And that's it. That's our decimal answer, 0.07. 65%. Okay. Well, I need to convert this to a decimal. So there's a point right here. I need to move it 2 spots to the left. 1, 2. Okay? So I put a 0 for the place out front. Then that decimal that's right there. Then we have a 6, 5. And so that's it. Our final answer is just 0.65. And that's our decimal. 0.3%. Okay? Well, first thing I want to do, I see that decimal that's right there. To convert this percent to a decimal, I move that to the left 2 spots. So 1, 2. That creates another 0. So we have the decimal here, 0 that's created, and the 0, 3, and then I put a 0 at front just to show where the decimal is. It makes it a little more easy to see. Okay. Well, this is rounded already to the thousandths place because the 3 is in the thousandths place. And so our final answer is 0.003. 445%. Okay. Well, I need to write this as a decimal. So I take the spot that's right there, and I have to move it, that decimal place, 2 spots to the left. 1, 2. Okay. That gives me 4.45. And that's it. I've converted this percent to a decimal. 0.452. So to convert a decimal to a percent, we need to move the decimal place 2 spots to the right. So we have 1, 2, and there we go. We have 2 spots. We have 45, decimal place 0.2, and now we have it as a percent. So our final answer is just 45.2%. 0.006. All right, I need to write that as a percent. Well, to do that, I take the decimal place and I move it 2 spots to the right. 2 spots to the right gives me, well, the decimal right there, 6, and then we have a 0 out in front of it. Now, I only leave 1 0 out in front of it. You don't need to keep writing all the zeros, but only because I like a 1 0 in front of the decimal place. And then again, that's percent. And so here we have our final answer of 0.6%. 0.002. Okay? Well, I need to write this as a percent. So I take this decimal place and I move it 2 spots to the right. Okay, 2 spots to the right. So that gives me the decimal place right there. I have a 2 and I have the 0 that's in front of the decimal place. But excuse me, now I have my percent. 0.002 is the same thing as 0.2%. And there we go, our final answer. 0.05. All right, I got to convert this to a percent. I move this decimal place 2 spots to the right. That gives me, well, just 5, and then there's a decimal place there, but we don't really need to write that, right? There's nothing else afterwards, so we just have 5, okay? And then we slap on the percent, and there we have our final answer, 5%. 4.78. All right, 4.78. Well, to write this as a percent, I take this decimal place and I have to move it 2 spots to the right, right there. So 4.78 becomes 478. Now, I don't really write that decimal anymore because there's nothing else after it, right? 478, but then we slap on that percent sign right there, and now 4.78 is the same thing as 478%, and that is our final answer. 0.1. Okay. Well, 0.1, to write that as a percent, I take that decimal and I have to move it 2 spots to the right. 1, 2. Well, there's an empty space that's created right there, right? So that 1, we add a 0 next to it, and so the decimal place goes right there, but we don't need to write that because we're done. There's nothing else afterwards. So the 0.1 becomes a 10, put the percent on, and there we have our final answer, 10%. 3.63. Okay, we have 3.63. I need to write that as a percent. Well, I take that decimal place right there, and I move it 2 spots to the right. 1, 2. So 3.63 becomes 363. Decimal place is right there, but I don't need to write it because there's nothing afterwards, so we leave it as 363. Put on a percent sign, and then we're done. Our final answer, 363%. 0.03. Okay? Well, 0.03, if I want to write that as a percent, I take the decimal and move it 2 spots to the right. 2 spots to the right gives me, right there, well, just a 3. That decimal place, I don't need to write because I'm basically done. There's nothing else after it. So 0.3 becomes 3. Put on the percent sign because we're converting it. And then we have our final answer of 3%. 25%. Okay. Well, we want to write 25% as a fraction. Okay. Well, 25% is 25%. Really, you can say 25 out of 100, right? 25 of 100. Okay. So we can put 25 out of 100 there. Okay. So essentially, we have a fraction, but we need to simplify it, right? Well, 5 goes into 25. How many times? Well, 5 goes into 25 5 times, and 5 goes into 100, all right? 5 goes into 100, well, that's 20 times. But yet I still can break this down, right? Because 5 goes into 20. 5 goes into 24 times, so we have, well, 1/4, right? 5 goes into 5 one time, and 5 goes into 24 times, 1/4. So our final fraction answer is 1/4. We have 70%. Well, what we can see here is 70%, it's 70 out of 100, right? So we have 70 out of 100, right? Now we need to simplify that. Well, luckily, both of them are divisible by 10. So essentially, we take out the 0 there. So 70 out of 100 is 7 out of 10. And this we can't simplify. So we're done. Our final answer is 7/10. 93%. Okay? Well, 93% is 93 out of 100. Okay? So we have a fraction right there. So we have 93 out of 100. Okay? But this actually, there's nothing we can break this down in, right? This does not simplify anymore. And so we're done. Our final answer is just 93 out of 100. 58%. So I have 58% right here, okay? Well, first I need to write this out of 100, right? So 58% is the same thing as 58 out of 100. So I have 58 out of 100, okay? Well, we can simplify this, okay? Well, we can see that both are divisible by 2. 58 and 100 are both even, so that's a good way to do it. Well, 58 breaks down to be divided by 2, comes out to be, what is that, 29, right? 50 divided by 2 is 25, and then 8 divided by 2 is 4. 25 plus 4 is 29. So we have 29 right here. 100 divided by 2 is 50, and we're actually done here. 29 over 50, there's nothing else, no other way that we can simplify that. So our final answer is just 29 over 50. There we have it. 50%. Okay? Well, 50%, right, is the same thing as 50 out of 100, right? A total of 100%, so 50 out of 100. So we have 50 over 100. All right, now to simplify this, we can break it down a few ways. It's up to you. We can say that 50 goes in 100 2 times, but let's break it up a little bit. 50, right, is divisible by 10, so is 100. So we cross off a 0, and we're left with 5 out of 10. But we can break that down even more. 5 goes into 10 2 times, and so we have 1/2, and then we're done. Nothing else more that we can simplify, so our final answer is just 1/2. 66.6 repeating. Okay? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually convert this to a decimal. Okay? So I convert that to decimal, I move the decimal place 2 spots over to the left, and we're left with 0.666 with a 6th part repeating. Okay? Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this equal x. I'm going to say x equals 0.6, really, repeating, right? 0.66666, same thing as 6 repeating, so like x equals this, right? I keep writing that till the cows come home. Alright, it goes on forever. Then I'm going to multiply this by 10. So I have 10x equals, well, that's 6.6 repeating. Okay? Forever, right? Move the decimal place 1 spot over. 10x, if x is 0.6 repeating, 10x is 6.6 repeating. Alright? So then 10x minus 1x is equal to 6.6% repeating minus 0.6, not percent, just 0.6 repeating. Okay? 10x minus 1x is 9x. Alright, and then 6.6 repeating minus 0.6 repeating is just 6. Then we divide by 9 to both sides, and we're left with x equals 6 over 9. Well, 6 over 9, both are divisible by 3, right? 3 goes into 6 2 times, and 3 goes into 9 3 times. And so our answer is 2/3. That's equal to x, right? Which x was 0.6 repeating, right? We said it there, and 0.6 repeating the same as 66.6%. Okay? So our final answer is just 2/3. 20%. Well, we know we can write 20% as, well, 20 out of a total of 100, right? 20% out of 100%. All right? So now we have a fraction, but we need to simplify it. Well, pretty straightforward, right? Zeros, we can cancel out the zeros, dividing both by 10. That gives us 2 out of 10. Then 2 goes into 10, right, 5 times. So divide 2 by 2 is 1, and 2 goes into 10 5 times, and so we have 1/5. So 1/5 is our final answer. 80%. All right, I have 80%. Well, 80% is 80% of 100%, let's say, right? So that's the same thing as 80 over 100, okay? So now we have a fraction we need to simplify. 80 out of 100, both are divisible by 10. Essentially cross off the last trailing 0. We have 8 out of 10. Now both of these numbers are divisible by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. We cannot simplify this anymore, and so our final fraction answer is just 4/5. 71%. All right? Well, 71%, we know that's the same thing as 71 out of 100. So we have 71 out of 100. Well, luckily for us, we cannot simplify this fraction anymore. There's nothing that goes into 71 that also goes into 100, and so we are done. Our final answer right here is pretty simple, just 71 over 100. 30%. Okay? Well, 30% we know is the same thing as 30 over 100. Okay? So we have 30 over 100, and we now need to simplify that. Well, luckily the trailing zeros are easy to simplify, dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 10, giving us 3 over 10. Well, there's nothing else that we can simplify here, right? We can't break that down anymore, so our final answer is just 3 over 10. 1 over 2. Okay? So I have 1/2. We'll have to write that as a percent. Okay? So 1/2 as a percent, well, the few ways we can go about it, we can try to find what's the decimal of this. Well, we can do long division. 2 goes into 1. Well, 2 can't go into 1 directly, so we add another decimal there. Okay? 2 goes into 10 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. Cancel out, we get 0, and we're done. So we have 0.5 as our decimal, okay? Well, 0.5 as a decimal, we know can be easily converted, right? We move that decimal 2 spots to the right, and we're left with 50, and that's a percent, and there we have our final answer, 50, percent. 1/8. So we have 1/8 right here, okay? Well, to write that as a percent, I'm first going to write it as a decimal, right? 1/8 as a decimal. So we do some long division. 8 goes into 1. And we have to really write 1.0 because it can't go into 1 evenly or nicely. So 8 goes into 10, well, 1 time, right? 1 times 8 is 8. Subtract it, 10 minus 8 is a 2. We add another 0 and bring that down. 8 goes into 20, well, 2 times, right? 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract it again, and we have a 4. We bring down another 0, right? We have 40. Now, can 8 go into 40 evenly? Yes, it can. 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. Subtract it. 40 minus 40 is 0. And so we're done. Our final answer, our decimal, is 0.125. But to convert that to be a percent, we move this decimal place 2 spots to the right. So 0.125 is the same thing as 12.5%. And there we have our final answer. 2/3. All right. 2/3, right? The way I would first go about this is I write that as a decimal. So I do long division, 3, that goes into 2. Okay? And I have to do 2.0 because it can't go into 2 evenly. 3 goes into 20, right? It's going to be 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. We then subtract 20 and 18, right? 18 from 20, we get 2. We add another 0, bring it down. Now the place value, 3 goes into 20, well, this is kind of repetitive, right? We can see it 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. Subtract 20 minus 18 is 2. We add another 0. Bring that down. One more for good measure, right? 6 times 3 is 18. We subtract it again, and we get a 2, etc. This is going to repeat forever. So our decimal is 0.666 repeating. Well, if I want to write that as a percent, I just take this decimal place, I move it 2 spots to the right, and I'm left with 66.6 repeating percent, and that is our final answer. 1 out of 100. Okay, this one's a little tricky. Okay, 1 out of 100. Okay, well, to write this as a decimal, okay, well, we can do the standard way we always do. It's long division. 100 goes into 1. Well, we need to add another 0, right? A place value, but it can't go into 10, so we add another 0, right? And 100 goes into 100 one time. 1 times 100, 100, we subtract it, and we're done. Very easy, right? 0.01 as a decimal. Well, then we need to convert that as a percent. We take the decimal place, move it 2 spots to the right, and we're left with, well, just 1%. And that's it. Our final answer here is just 1%. 2 1/10. Okay. Well, the number 2, okay, that's gonna be a little separate. Okay, there's a few ways we can go about this. Okay, some people separate this 2 as just 200%, and we figure out what the 1/10 is. But let's just do it together. Let's write this as an improper fraction. 10 times 2 is 20, plus 1 is 21. So we have 21 over 10 right here. Okay, so 2 and 1/10 is the same thing as 21 over 10. Then we can do some long division. 10 goes into 21. Well, 10 goes into 21 2 times, right? 2 times. 2 times 10 is 20. We subtract it. 21 minus 20 is 1. We add a 0, bring that down. We have 10. 10 goes into 10 one time, right? 1 times 10 is 10. Subtract it, and we're done. So we have 2.1 as a decimal. Well, to convert that decimal, 2.1, into a percent, we take the decimal place and move it 2 spots to the right. That leaves us with an extra 0, 210, and that's a percent, right? We convert the decimal to a percent, and so our final answer here is just 210%. 3/8. Okay, so I have 3/8. I'm going to do long division here to write this as a decimal. So 8 goes into 3. Okay, well, 8 can't go into 3 directly, so we have 30 here. Make a decimal place. Okay, 8 goes into 30, right, 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. We subtract this, okay, and we get a 6. Okay, 30 minus 24 is 6. Add another place value. Bring it down. 60. Okay, what times 8 gets me close to 60? Well, that's going to be 7, right? 7 times 8 is 56. We subtract them. 60 minus 56 is 4. We add another place value. Bring down the 0. Okay, and there's an arrow close enough. 40. 8 goes into 40 evenly 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. We subtract the 2. 40 minus 40 is 0. And we're done. We have our decimal. Okay, so our decimal is 0.375. Well, to write that as a percent, I take that decimal place, I move it 2 spots to the right, and I'm left with 37.5%. And so there we have it. Our final answer is 37.5%. 1/10. Okay, so I have 1/10. Well, first I want to write this as a decimal. So I have long division. 10 goes into 1. Well, 10 can't go into 1, so I make another place value here. And 10 goes into 10 one time, right? 1 times 10 is 10. Subtract it, and we get 0, and we're done. So our decimal is just 0.1. Well, to convert that to a percent, we take the decimal place, move it 2 spots to the right, and we're left with 10. Slap on a percent, and we're done. Final answer is just 10%. 87 into or over 100. Okay, I have 87 over 100. Well, first thing I want to do is write that as a decimal. So I do long division. 100 goes into 87. Okay, well, 100 does not go into 87 evenly or nicely or at all, really. So we add a 0 on top there. Okay, so 100 goes into 870. Well, 100 doesn't go into 870 evenly, but it can go into 800 8 times, right? So 8 times 100 is 800. We subtract that. 870 minus 800 is just 70. 100 cannot go into 70. Add another 0, bring it down. We have 700. Well, now 100 can go evenly into 700, right? 7 times. 7 times 100, 700, and then we're done. 700 divided by 700 is 0. So we have our decimal, 0.87, and I have to write that as a percent. Well, we take that decimal place, and we can move it 2 spots to the right to convert a decimal to a percent. 2 spots to the right gives us 87%. We're done. So we got our final answer of just 87%.
Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math. Minute Math. When you need help, you use Minute Math. MinuteMathTutor.com.